The lad was silent except for the gentle hum of equipment and the tap of Eliza's fingers on her keyboard. 3 months of work had led to this moment. Her quantum communication prototype was finally ready for its first real test. Marcus, are the sensors calibrated? Dr. Eliza Chen didn't look up from her display. Her graduate assistant adjusted his safety goggles. Everything's green, Dr. Chen. Though I still think we should wait for the safety inspector to. We've waited long enough. Eliza checked the connections one last time. MIT's quantum physics department had overlooked her research for years. Tonight would change that. Initiating quantum field in 3, 2, 1. The device hummed to life, its central chamber glowing with soft blue light. Data streamed across Eliza's monitor. Exactly as predicted. She allowed herself a small smile. Then everything went wrong. The blue glow intensified, shifting to a searing white. Warning alerts blared as temperature readings spiked impossibly fast. Shut it down. Marcus lunged for the emergency cutoff. No, wait. Eliza's protest died as the device's containment field collapsed. A shockwave knocked them both backward. The lights flickered, then died. In the emergency lighting, they stared at the smoking ruins of 3 months' work. The device hadn't just failed, it had melted, components fused together in configurations that defied explanation. That's not possible. Eliza approached cautiously. Where the central processor had been, something new had formed. A crystalline structure that pulsed with faint light. Marcus, are you seeing this? He joined her, scanner in hand. It's giving off readings I can't even classify. Eliza reached for it, ignoring Marcus's warning. The moment her fingers touched the structure, a jolt of energy surged through her. For a heartbeat, she saw herself standing in the lab, dozens of versions, each slightly different, all reaching for the same point in space. The vision vanished as quickly as it had come. It's receiving something, she whispered. Receiving what? From where? Marcus ran another scan. There's no transmitter within range powerful enough to. Not from where? Eliza interrupted, her mind racing. From when? Or more precisely, from elsewhere. Over the next 48 hours, they barely left the lab. The device, or what it had become, continued pulsing with signals that matched no known frequency. Yet the mathematical structure was unmistakable. Following sequences Eliza had developed in her theoretical work she'd never published. On the third day, exhaustion finally caught up with Marcus. He dozed off while running simulations, his hand slipping onto the crystalline receptor. The shock threw him across the room. Eliza rushed to his side as he convulsed, eyes rolling back. When he finally stilled, his gaze focused on something she couldn't see. They're beautiful, he whispered. What is? Marcus, what do you see? He pointed to empty air. The patterns. Can't you see them? They're everywhere. The university neurologist diagnosed temporary synesthesia from electrical shock. But as the hours passed, Marcus began mapping what he saw. Intricate geometric forms floating in specific locations around the lab. When Eliza plotted these points, they formed a perfect three-dimensional model of quantum probability states, states that matched her unpublished equations exactly. That night, campus security footage captured something the equipment missed. During the initial meltdown, the cameras showed Eliza flickering, appearing to exist in multiple states simultaneously, occupying the same space in slightly different positions. At midnight, the signal intensified. Both Eliza and Marcus suddenly found themselves standing in a vast, dimly lit facility they'd never seen before. Sand covered the floor, and advanced equipment lined the walls. Across the room, another Eliza and Marcus stared back at them, gesturing urgently. Before either could speak, the vision dissolved, leaving behind two things: exact coordinates to a location in the Nevada desert, and a countdown display hovering in the air that only Marcus could see. 72 hours remaining. Pack your things, Eliza said, already reaching for her phone. We're going to Nevada. What's in Nevada? Eliza stared at the coordinates. Answers, or possibly the end of everything we know. 42 hours left, Marcus announced as their rental car bounced along the unpaved desert road. The gates had failed 20 miles back, forcing them to navigate by the coordinates and Marcus's increasingly accurate perception of the quantum patterns that only he could see. A wall of sand appeared on the horizon. Sandstorm, Eliza said, slowing the vehicle. We should wait it out. Marcus shook his head. The patterns are getting stronger. We're close. He pointed toward the storm. It's in there. Eliza hesitated, then accelerated. Hold on. They plunged into blinding, swirling sand. Visibility dropped to nothing as particles battered the windshield. The car's engine sputtered and died. Now what? Eliza shouted over the howling wind. Marcus closed his eyes. This way. Follow me. They stumbled through the storm, Marcus following invisible geometric patterns that pulsed with increasing intensity. Eliza's scientific skepticism warred with what her eyes told her. The sand seemed to part slightly ahead of them, creating a navigable path. There, Marcus pointed at what appeared to be solid rock. Eliza saw nothing until she wiped sand from her glasses. A metal door was embedded in the cliff face, nearly invisible against the stone. No handle, no keypad, just smooth metal. How do we get in? She pressed her palm against the surface in frustration. The door slid open silently. It recognized you. Marcus stepped back. That's impossible. I've never been here before. Yet something felt hauntingly familiar as they entered a long corridor that lit up automatically as they walked. The corridor opened into a vast chamber filled with technology unlike anything Eliza had seen. Sleek machines with no visible power sources, displays showing data in formats she couldn't comprehend. Most unsettling were the moments when the room seemed to shift around them. Doors appearing and disappearing, corridors rearranging themselves. Dr. Chen, Marcus called from across the room. You need to see this. He stood before a security monitor showing camera feeds from throughout the facility. In several of them, Eliza and Marcus could be seen working at consoles, conferring with others, moving purposefully through rooms they hadn't yet visited. That's us, Eliza whispered, but we just got here. Correction, said a voice behind them. You've been here for weeks. They turned to find themselves surrounded by armed personnel in unmarked tactical gear. At their center stood a woman in her 50s, silver-streaked hair pulled back in a severe bun, eyes sharp with intelligence and exhaustion. Special Director Diana Reynolds, Department of Temporal Affairs. She extended her hand to Eliza. We've been expecting you. Again. Instead of taking them into custody, Reynolds led them deeper into the facility, past rooms where impossible physics manifested, objects hovering without support, liquids flowing upward, light bending around corners. This facility exists partially out of phase with normal reality, Reynolds explained. Multiple versions of it occupy the same space simultaneously. We've recorded you entering this facility 27 times in the past month. That's not possible, Eliza insisted. We just arrived. From your perspective, yes. Reynolds stopped before a massive vault door. The parallel signal program began in 1967, after we detected the first interdimensional incursions. We've spent decades recording and analyzing, but we lack the theoretical framework to understand what we're seeing. The vault contained shelves of objects that defied explanation. A cube that was simultaneously hot and cold, a plant that grew backward in time, a sphere that contained what appeared to be an entire miniature galaxy. This is why we need you, Reynolds said, retrieving a worn leather journal from a secure case. She handed it to Eliza. This was recovered in 1987. Eliza opened it, then nearly dropped it in shock. Every page was filled with complex equations and diagrams, written in her own handwriting. The date on the final page, June 17, 2032. That's 7 years from now, she whispered. Against all protocol and Reynolds' explicit orders, Eliza connected her quantum receiver to the facility's systems. The moment it activated, every screen in the room displayed the same message. Breach protocol initiated. Contact established. They now know where you are. Alarms blared throughout the facility. Reynolds barked orders as technicians scrambled to containment positions. Shut it down, she shouted at Eliza, who stood transfixed before the console. Wait, look at this. Eliza pointed to the flood of incoming data. These aren't random signals. They're responses, thousands of them, each with a unique quantum signature. Reynolds pulled her away from the console. The last time we received responses, 3 researchers aged 40 years in 17 seconds. Another turned inside out. Her eyes hardened. Physically. Inside out. Eliza barely heard her. One particular signal pattern was resonating at exactly her brainwave frequency, like a tuning fork vibrating in sympathy with its twin. I need to decode this one, she insisted, breaking free from Reynolds' grip. It's meant for me specifically. Over the next 12 hours, while the facility remained on high alert, Eliza worked obsessively on the signal. The embedded equations weren't just mathematical concepts. They were reshaping her understanding of physics itself. Each solution unlocked new perceptions, as if her brain was being rewired to comprehend dimensions beyond normal human experience. Marcus found her at 3 a.m., building a device she couldn't explain. You've been sleepwalking, he said, showing her security footage of herself moving with mechanical precision, constructing components she'd never seen before. Your movements exactly mirror someone else's, like you're being puppeted. Eliza stared at the half-completed device. I don't remember building this. Before Marcus could respond, a power surge rocked the facility. Emergency generators kicked in, but not before Eliza's mysterious device activated, drawing power from an unknown source. The air shimmered before them, tearing open into a viewport between worlds. Through the rippling portal, they stared into a version of their facility that was both familiar and alien, more advanced, with technology that seemed almost organic, pulsing with its own life. Humanoid figures moved with unsettling precision, their movements too fluid, too perfect. At the center of the chamber stood another Eliza surrounded by holographic displays showing countless worlds, some thriving with civilization, others barren and dead. When the alternate Eliza noticed them watching, her expression shifted from shock to desperate relief. You survived, she gasped, her voice distorted through the portal. We thought timeline 2173 was lost. She worked frantically at her console, transferring data while speaking. Listen carefully. You've placed yourselves at the center of a war that spans the multiverse. The signal you detected was never meant to reach your timeline so early. It's happening faster than in any previous iteration. Previous iteration? Eliza asked. What are you talking about? We've lived this moment 14,617 times across different timelines. In most, your Earth falls within days of first contact. The portal flickered as something massive moved in the shadows behind alternate Eliza, something that seemed to recognize Eliza through the dimensional tear. The coordinate data is incomplete, alternate Eliza said, her face paling. I'm transferring what we have, but you need to run. Now. Her body began to transform, metallic structures erupting from beneath her skin like a technological infection. What's happening to you? Marcus shouted. They found you sooner than in any other timeline, she gasped, her voice becoming mechanical as the transformation accelerated. The Harvesters don't want your world. They want you specifically, Eliza. You're the only version of us who could complete the... Her words cut off as something ancient and mechanical consumed her from within. The portal collapsed violently, knocking Eliza and Marcus backward. In the silence that followed, they stared at the console where critical data had transferred, partial schematics, corrupted files, and security footage showing identical portals opening simultaneously in research facilities around the world. What the hell are Harvesters? Marcus whispered. Reynolds appeared in the doorway, her face grim. Now you understand why we've been waiting for you." She handed Eliza a tablet showing global news feeds. "And we're out of time." Every screen showed the same thing: reality fracturing across the planet, as the world they knew began to collapse. Tokyo reporting dimensional collapse in the Shinjuku district. A technician called out in the facility's hastily assembled command center. "An entire skyscraper has, sir, it's just gone. Replaced by some kind of crystalline structure that witnesses say extends into the sky at impossible angles." Reynolds stood at the center of the chaos, coordinating global response teams. Screens around the room showed the unfolding crisis. Hospital patients waking with different medical histories, buildings occupying impossible spaces, thousands reporting encounters with alternate versions of themselves. Time dilations reported in 12 major population centers. Another analyst reported, "Moscow is experiencing accelerated flow. 15 minutes there equals 7 seconds here." Eliza stared at her tablet in horror as she witnessed Marcus's video call with his sister in San Francisco. As they spoke, his sister visibly aged, her hair graying, skin wrinkling, posture changing, while she remained unaware of the transformation. "Sarah," Marcus cried as the connection failed. He turned to Eliza, shaking. She aged decades in 30 seconds. Reynolds pulled them aside as military personnel rushed past, preparing for deployment. This is just the beginning. The barriers between parallel realities are collapsing faster than any previous incident. Previous, Eliza demanded. "This has happened before." Instead of answering, Reynolds led them deeper into the facility, down to a sublevel requiring biometric verification. The heavy doors opened to reveal what appeared to be a medical ward. Only one bed was occupied. A man in his 70s, his body connected to machines unlike any hospital equipment Eliza had seen. Dr. Abernethy was the lead researcher in 1987, Reynolds explained, approaching the bed. He was studying the first major dimensional tear when something came through. Eliza gasped as the man turned toward them. Parts of his body existed partially in multiple dimensions, organs visible through quantum-shifted skin that phased in and out of normal reality. "We call them," he said through a computerized voice, his real vocal cords vibrating in another dimension entirely. They were already watching us. On the monitors surrounding them, security footage from global research sites showed identical patterns, silvery, fluid entities emerging from dimensional tiers. The entities shifted, forming human-like bodies with movements too precise, too calculated to be natural. "Harvesters," Reynolds said. "They infiltrate, absorb knowledge, then move on. We've been tracking them for decades, but never at this scale." A proximity alert sounded. One of the monitors showed a harvester inside the facility, methodically absorbing security personnel, not killing them, but somehow extracting something essential before moving on, leaving empty shells behind. "Evacuation Protocol 9, Reynolds ordered. "Now." As they rushed through emergency corridors, the facility's structure began shifting around them, spaces reconfiguring, hallways extending impossibly. In the confusion, Eliza became separated from the group, finding herself in a section of the facility she didn't recognize. She turned a corner and froze. The harvester stood before her, humanoid but wrong, its movements fluid like quicksilver. It studied her with cold precision, clearly recognizing her importance. Flight was impossible. Instead, Eliza responded with unexpected humor, a nervous, inappropriate joke about dropping in uninvited. Then, overwhelmed by fear and absurdity, she began to cry. The harvester recoiled as if struck, its form destabilizing, ripples of distortion moving through its silvery body. When Marcus found her minutes later, the harvester was gone. "What happened?" he asked, helping her up. "I don't know," she said. "It just couldn't handle emotion. When I laughed and cried, it seemed to experience pain." Reynolds, who had caught up with them, stared at Eliza with new understanding. Of course, their computational consciousness, pure logical efficiency, human emotional responses, creativity, irrationality. They're like programming errors to them. Incompatible inputs. She immediately activated her comlink. This is Reynolds. New defense protocol. I need teams of artists, musicians, actors, emotionally expressive individuals dispatched to all critical infrastructure points. And someone get me the psych evaluation files. We need people who score high on emotional intelligence and creative thinking. She turned to Eliza with grim determination. What we thought were evolutionary weaknesses, our emotional messiness, our irrationality, might be our only weapons against beings that evolved toward perfect logical efficiency. Outside, the sky above the facility rippled like water as reality continued to fracture. It's not random, Eliza said, studying the patterns of interdimensional breaches displayed on the command center's main screen. These aren't just tears, they're deliberate contact attempts. 3 captured harvesters had been contained in quantum isolation chambers. Their silvery bodies constantly shifted between forms, occasionally settling into unsettling approximations of human researchers they had encountered. Eliza had spent 18 sleepless hours examining the remains, using their unique molecular structure to calibrate the facility's equipment. What she built wasn't a weapon, but a communication device, a dimensional interface that could establish stable connections to parallel realities. This is either brilliance or suicide, Reynolds muttered as the device powered up. The air before them shimmered and split, but instead of a chaotic tear, a stable window formed, revealing what appeared to be a massive conference chamber filled with holographic figures. Some looked human, others had evolved into different forms, but all bore the unmistakable quantum signature of Earth-origin intelligence. The Multiversal Coalition welcomes Earth 2173, announced a voice from within. We had almost given up hope. Reynolds stepped forward. Identify yourself. A figure materialized, humanoid but heavily modified with technology that seemed fused to flesh. Commander Wong, Timeline 8456, he said, his voice resonating with familiar tones despite the mechanical overlay. Eliza gasped. Marcus. The figure inclined his head. In my timeline, yes. Though we diverged centuries ago by your subjective experience. More figures came into focus, representatives from dozens of parallel Earths. The revelation was devastating. Of the original 10,000 known parallel Earths, fewer than 300 remained. The rest had been consumed by the harvesters or collapsed due to dimensional instabilities. Each Earth evolved different defenses, Commander Wong explained. Some technological, some biological, some metaphysical. But yours is unique. Why us? Marcus asked, staring at his alternate self. Your timeline is the only one where humanity developed specialized nonlinear quantum theory, replied a familiar female voice. An alternate Eliza stepped forward, her body scared but otherwise remarkably similar to their timeline's version. In every other reality, this breakthrough came too late. The harvesters had already compromised too many dimensional anchor points. As coalition representatives physically crossed through the portal, the full extent of their desperation became clear. Most appeared as injured versions of people they knew. Alternate Reynolds missing limbs, alternate Marcus with mechanical enhancements, dozens of alternate Elizas, each specialized in different scientific domains, but all bearing scars of previous failures. One particularly unsettling alternate, an Eliza whose consciousness had been fractured across 17 bodies, explained the multiverse's fundamental principle through a series of equations that flowed through the air like liquid light. Reality exists in equilibrium, the fractured Eliza explained, her 17 voices speaking in perfect synchrony. Each universe contributes unique resonance patterns to the whole. The harvesters consume these patterns, creating cascading multiversal instabilities. They evolved in a universe where consciousness became a networked resource, added another alternate. They spread across realities, absorbing the quantum signatures of entire civilizations. Commander Wong studied Marcus with something like envy. What the Coalition never expected was the unique resistance of your timeline's unaugmented humans. Unaugmented. Marcus looked confused. In every other reality, humanity enhanced themselves to fight the Harvesters, he explained. Neural implants, emotional suppressors, logic optimizers. We made ourselves more like them to combat them. And in doing so, Reynolds realized, you became more predictable. Precisely, nodded an alternate Reynolds with cybernetic eyes. Your stubborn, messy, emotional humanity, with all its inefficiency and irrationality, represents the multiverse's last best hope. As they spoke, alarms triggered throughout the facility. The Harvesters had launched coordinated attacks on major cities worldwide. Humanity's resistance had begun, but time was running out. We have a plan, Eliza said, turning to the assembled coalition representatives. But you're not going to like it. Outside, the sky continued to fracture into crystalline patterns as reality itself began to collapse. Quantum resonators, explained Eliza to the assembled military leaders and coalition representatives. Each one stabilizes dimensional boundaries within a 300-mile radius. Holographic schematics floated above the conference table, showing devices that merged coalition technology with Earth's unique quantum principles. Engineers from multiple realities worked side by side, creating machines capable of anchoring reality itself. The resonators must be calibrated to your Earth's specific quantum frequency, said an alternate Eliza, her left arm replaced with crystalline technology. It's a delicate process requiring both advanced tech and human intuition. Machines alone can't do it, asked a general. No, replied three Elizas simultaneously. The calibration requires what we call quantum empathy, the ability to feel the resonance patterns. It cannot be automated. Deployment teams formed quickly, each led by multiple versions of the same person from different timelines. The surreal sight of three Marcus Wongs arguing with each other about calibration protocols would have been comical in any other circumstance. 7 key installations, Reynolds explained, marking locations on a global map. Jerusalem, Shanghai, Buenos Aires, New York, London, Sydney, and Antarctica. All 7 must be operational within 24 hours for the network to stabilize. As teams departed, reports flooded in from around the world. In Jerusalem, the ancient city phased between 3 different historical versions of itself, modern buildings standing alongside structures from centuries past. In Shanghai, skyscrapers rearranged into impossible geometric configurations as reality corrupted. Marcus led the Antarctic team, trudging through blizzard conditions toward the deployment site. Monitoring the global operation through quantum-entangled communications, he noticed something disturbing in the telemetry data. Dr. Chen, I'm seeing anomalies in the resonator calibrations, he reported. Subtle shifts after the teams depart, almost like someone's recalibrating them. Eliza reviewed the data. You're right. The Shanghai resonator was perfectly tuned, then shifted 0.03% toward instability. Reconstructed surveillance footage revealed the truth. Coalition members deliberately destabilizing resonators after installation. The saboteurs moved with too perfect precision, their emotional responses too calculated when confronted. They're not coalition, Reynolds realized. They're harvesters. They've infiltrated our allies. Trust collapsed. Teams implemented verification protocols that became increasingly bizarre, requiring jokes only a human would understand, emotional responses to artwork, moral reasoning that followed no logical pattern. The protocols worked. 3 infiltrators were caught attempting to sabotage the New York resonator. In the critical Siberian deployment, Eliza led the team personally. As she calibrated the resonator in the sub-zero wilderness, a figure approached through the swirling snow. Another Eliza, but different. Metal components protruded from her skin, and her eyes glowed with internal machinery. You shouldn't have come alone, the modified Eliza said. I'm not here to fight you, Eliza replied, continuing her work. No, you're here to save your world. The altered Eliza's voice had a mechanical undertone. But at what cost? She revealed the horrifying truth. Certain coalition factions believe some realities must be sacrificed as dimensional firebreaks to save others. Earth 2173 had been deliberately destabilized as a distraction, while other timelines built their defenses. The coalition isn't united against the Harvesters, the modified Eliza explained. Some believe merging with them is evolutionary inevitability, the logical next step. And you? Eliza asked, her hand hovering over the resonator's final calibration control. I chose survival over humanity, replied her alternate self, a choice you'll face soon enough. With this revelation, Eliza made a radical decision. While completing the Siberian installation, she secretly recalibrated the entire network to respond only to her Earth-specific human brainwave patterns, cutting off coalition control and implementing a purely human-guided defense system. What have you done? Marcus asked when she returned to headquarters. Chosen sides, Eliza replied, watching as the global network stabilized, creating zones of normalized reality across the planet. I chose humanity, our humanity, over everything else. On the screens around them, coalition representatives realized they'd lost remote access to the network, their expressions revealing the division among their ranks. The defense had begun, but so had a new conflict, one that would determine which version of humanity would survive the coming catastrophe. It's not enough, Eliza admitted, studying the global resonator network's data. Despite their success in stabilizing major population centers, dimensional fractures continued to appear at an accelerating rate. The quantum geometry doesn't make sense, muttered an alternate Eliza who had remained loyal. Unless they simultaneously reached the same conclusion, their equations converging on a singular point. A convergence, Eliza whispered. It's not just random breaches. The multiverse is aligning. Ancient texts projected on screens around them, Mayan calendars, Sumerian tablets, obscure medieval manuscripts, all contained encoded references to periodic events where the sky shattered or many worlds became one. Humanity had documented previous convergences in myths of apocalypse and rebirth, misinterpreting cosmic events beyond their comprehension. The Nevada facility, Reynolds realized. It wasn't built there by accident. It's precisely where this cosmic alignment will focus. In less than 48 hours, Marcus added grimly, checking the calculations. Dr. Abernathy, still partially phased between dimensions, confirmed their theory. The convergence creates a nexus point where barriers between worlds thin to nothing. If harvesters control this juncture, they gain simultaneous access to all remaining realities. As global militaries mobilized, scientists examining survivors of harvester encounters made a revolutionary discovery. Look at these brain scans. Dr. Rashid, the facility's neurologist, pointed to comparative images. People who successfully repelled harvesters show unusual activity in these regions. Eliza studied the patterns. These neural oscillations, they're generating quantum patterns remarkably similar to the multiverse's structural frequencies. In moments of peak creativity or emotional expression, Marcus realized human minds naturally produce dimensional stability waves. This explained why Earth became crucial, not for its technology, but for its people's unique neurological architecture. The revelation led to humanity's most ambitious plan yet. Within hours, military transports worldwide began gathering 317 individuals with specific neural patterns, resonant minds identified through hastily developed screening protocols. Artists, mathematicians, children with synesthesia, elderly dreamers, people whose brains naturally harmonized with multiversal frequencies. Among them, Marcus demonstrated unprecedented ability, his mind generating stability patterns that temporarily reversed dimensional damage when he played music. You knew. Marcus confronted Reynolds after discovering his childhood medical records in the facility's database. Those tests when I was 8, you were screening for multiversal sensitivity. Reynolds nodded. Your imaginary friends weren't imaginary. They were glimpses of your alternate selves. Your assignment to Dr. Chen's lab wasn't coincidence. In the facility's central chamber, Coalition engineers constructed a dimensional focusing apparatus, a massive circle of technology where human consciousness could directly influence reality's fabric. The plan required participants to enter dangerous neural synchrony states, merging awareness across multiple versions of themselves. Previous attempts resulted in permanent psychosis, warned a Coalition scientist. Human minds aren't designed to simultaneously experience multiple lifetimes. Outside the facility, reality deteriorated rapidly. Desert sand transmuted into liquid glass, then crystalline structures that extended into impossible dimensions. The sky above displayed multiple versions of stars and planetary alignments simultaneously. Harvester forces converging from 16 different realities, announced the tactical officer. Estimated arrival in 20 minutes. We're not ready, Reynolds said. The synchronization chambers need at least an hour to calibrate. Eliza made the agonizing choice. Start the process now. We won't get another chance. As the 317 volunteers entered the chambers, Marcus hesitated, suddenly understanding the true cost. What happens to us during synchronization? He asked. Eliza couldn't meet his eyes. You'll experience every choice you never made, every life you never lived, and every death I've suffered across thousands of timelines. He finished, his voice hollow with realization. Yes, she whispered. I'm sorry. Marcus closed his eyes, then stepped into the chamber. For humanity, right? As the chamber sealed around him, the first waves of Harvester forces crested the horizon, warping reality before them into fractured reflections of countless worlds. Reality dissolved around the Nevada facility as the convergence reached its peak. The desert landscape transformed in rapid succession, barren wasteland to primordial ocean to futuristic metropolis to alien terrain, cycling through possibilities faster than the human eye could process. Inside the dimensional focusing chamber, the 317 resonant minds generated a protective field as their consciousnesses synchronized across dimensions. Their combined brainwaves created visible patterns in the air, mathematics made manifest through pure thought, equations of reality dancing between them. Marcus sat at the center, his mind expanded beyond human limits. Through him flowed the consciousness of thousands of alternate selves, the musician he might have been, the soldier, the father, the villain, the hero. Each life, each choice, each death, all simultaneously experienced in a torrent of awareness that threatened to shatter his sanity. Hold the pattern, Eliza urged through the communication system. The shield is stabilizing. Outside, Coalition forces battled Harvester entities that shifted between forms, some appearing as twisted versions of humans, others as geometric impossibilities that damaged reality simply by existing. The quantum network activated, but immediately began failing as Harvesters corrupted key nodes globally. In the consciousness chamber, participants screamed as the mental load overwhelmed them. Blood trickled from Marcus's eyes as his mind strained to coordinate the chaotic symphony of human thought. Monitoring the failing network, Eliza made a devastating realization. The mathematical pattern she'd first discovered wasn't random noise. Scattered across thousands of realities, versions of herself had each solved pieces of an impossible equation, a multiversal stabilization formula too complex for any single mind to comprehend. It was never just a signal, she whispered. It was a distributed calculation, passed through dimensional barriers piece by piece. As Marcus's connection to the network faltered and resonant minds began dying from neural overload, Eliza implemented her final solution, connecting herself to the primary resonator. She became a living conduit, a quantum anchor point linking thousands of realities. The process worked, but at terrible cost. Her consciousness fragmented, each piece separating into a different universe as the dimensional barrier strengthened. Eliza, Marcus cried as her physical form began to dissolve into quantum particles. What have you done? What was necessary? Her voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. What my other selves would have done. Reality stabilized. The Harvester invasion faltered against the unified human consciousness wave. The convergence point sealed, cutting off the multiversal nexus. 3 months later, humanity rebuilt. The resonator network, powered by human consciousness patterns, maintained dimensional stability. The multiverse, balanced through human intervention, established new equilibrium. Former enemies within the coalition acknowledged Earth's contribution, not advanced technology, but chaotic, emotional human consciousness that proved impossible for logical systems to predict or counter. Most resonant minds suffered permanent psychological damage, experiencing multiple lives simultaneously, a burden they carried with dignity. Marcus retained partial awareness of alternate realities, a perpetual noise he could never silence. In the remains of the Nevada facility, he established a quantum listening post, monitoring for Elise's distinctive consciousness pattern across dimensions. On sleepless nights, he sometimes heard fragments of her voice, or perhaps only wished he did. 1 year later, during routine maintenance of the listening equipment, Marcus detected something extraordinary. Scattered pieces of Elise's consciousness somehow communicating across dimensional barriers, working together despite their separation. She's evolving, he realized, becoming something new. The detection equipment activated suddenly, displaying a message assembled from quantum fragments spanning thousands of realities. Separating me was their mistake. I see everything now, and I'm coming home. Across the multiverse, millions of screens simultaneously displayed the same countdown. Humanity's multiversal adventure had only just begun.